You ready? All right. Good morning. This is Becky Wiglin, curator of the National Balloon Museum. This is July 28th, 2014, and we are in our Ballooning Pioneers interviewing. And the first interviewer or interviewee is...
Hi, I'm Mary Graves.
From?
Well, where?
That's a good
All
question.
Over, Miami and Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and South Dakota.
What?
I'm Willie Piccard from Minneapolis.
I'm Don Piccard from Minneapolis.
I'm Harold Graves, actually from Wisconsin.
And?
I'm Jim Fromm, but probably more of a spectator than a legend like these folks. But anyway, I'm here.
And he's a balloonist from Indianola.
That's right.
Yes, it's all right. All right. And
You are?
I already said who I was.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that you got in there.
I'm still the same person I was at the beginning.
Okay.
All right, we have, yesterday we had the Hall of Fame and inducted 3 people into the Hall of Fame, Nikki Kaplan, Chauncey Dunn, and Don Piccard. And he is here to represent that group. And then we inducted 3 people into the newly formed Ed Yost Pilot Award, which is 40 years of safe flying. And Mr. Graves here is representing that group. We had Gary Rubel, Rob Bartholomew, and Harold. And the first 2 are probably still flying somewhere. And so we've got some early balloonists here, and we got some good stories here. And I'm going to start with the ladies, because I heard a really cool story yesterday, and I want it on tape, on how you got into ballooning. Willie?
Well, you should start with Mary.
Okay, Mary, we'll start.
I was watching Captain Kangaroo. Well, I had it on for my children, but
Sure.
you know. And as soon as it came on, you could hear the burner. And Captain was in a balloon in California, and the whole show was done from that balloon. And I was sitting on a hassock just, and I said to myself then, I'm going to do that someday. And then there were a few balloon events in Madison, Wisconsin, where I lived, and I started going to them, and eventually got to here where I met Harold.
She had to come all the way to Indianola and meet you?
Yes,
Oh,
that's where we first met.
wow.
Although we lived about 60 miles apart at the time.
Yeah.
And Mary actually didn't tell the whole story. She went to the balloon event, the first balloon event she saw, and I was actually flying. I actually won that race
Oh.
in 1970-something
Yes.
in Madison, Wisconsin.
But you never met until you got here, huh?
And we met when she was crewing for Bill Murtaugh, and I was staying in a room next to Bill, and that's how we met.
And the rest is history.
The rest is all history.
Well, that's exciting. I hadn't heard that one. And I watched Captain Kangaroo, but I don't remember.
I'm going to look it up and Google and see if I
Yeah.
can find where it was, and if we can possibly get maybe a copy.
Copy or the tape, or yeah. Okay, and Willie, you have a nice story on how you got into ballooning.
I was wanting a part-time job, and I wanted to learn how to do upholstery. So I went around to all the upholstery places close to us in Costa Mesa. And nobody'd hire me because I didn't have experience on industrial machines. So all my life, but it's always been on a home machine. So Don had an ad in the paper, part-time help wanted, industrial sewing. So I answered the ad, and there was this guy with a long ponytail.
And you went, oh, what did I get myself into? Yeah.
I did. And when I walked into the loft, there was balloon fabric all over the floor, about this deep. The whole loft, and 3 machines sitting there. And he said, well, can you sew? And I said, well, yes, but not on industrial machines. He said, well, if you sew on home machines, you can sew on industrial machines. They're easier. So I sat down at the first one, which is a double needle, and he had 2 rolls of fabric, one on either side. And you put the 2 rolls together, run it through a machine. When you got that panel done, you moved it on to the next one, and you continued on with tapes and et cetera, the third one. So he said, okay, you're hired. So, okay. We finished that balloon, and he built a, what was it, 8 by something box.
4 by 4 by 8 foot plywood box.
And he had a pulley rigged up on the ceiling.
Thank you.
So when,
Sorry to disturb you. I'm with Anal Schools.
Oh.
I'm here to pick up the chairs back there.
Yes,
Okay. Do I need to do anything?
just
Just open
open
the
the door
Okay. All right. Thank you.
and he can take them out. Are we still taping or not? Okay. All right, continue.
and he would
That's right.
feed it through the pulley up there, and I was in the box stuffing it into it. Hottest day in California. Got that done. He shipped it off to Alaska, where it was to lift machinery into the tundra area. So that job was finished. And so I thought, okay, now I'll go around and tell them I have experience.
Yeah.
They
So
still,
what was the time? How long did this take you? Like a month, a couple weeks, or what?
I think we were sewing that balloon for 2 or 3 months.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was the first 1,000,000 cubic foot plus hot air balloon.
Million?
1.2 million cubic feet.
Goodness, and it went to Alaska?
Well, it never quite got there. They had this idea that because the government wouldn't let them drive machines on the ground, because you touch that ground up there on the north slope, you destroy it.
Oh,
So they were doing everything by helicopter. But they had some big pieces over 20,000 pounds that they didn't have a helicopter for.
oh.
So these guys up Columbia River Helicopter Company decided, well, we'll get a balloon and we'll tow it with a helicopter.
And did it work?
No,
Oh.
they said, how much wind? And I said, well, the balloon will take 15 mile an hour. We'll operate 50 mile an hour, but not anymore. Excuse me. So when they got up there, they found that on the north shore, the slope, if there was what would normally be a calm day, it was 15 miles an hour. When it would normally be 15 miles an hour, it was 30 miles an
Oh.
hour. And so they decided not to do it, but they already bought the balloon.
Bought the balloon.
And we put the balloon in the box and shipped it up to them.
Ah,
We inflated it, lifted a D8 tractor off the ground to prove that it could lift 20,000 pounds, which the D8's a little more than 20. And that was the end of the story. Never heard any more about it.
really?
I took some 60 millimeter film, and they were taking 35 camera. I never even got a copy of their film, but I did get my movie film.
Ah, okay.
so
All right.
after that job was over, he came back from Sweden or wherever he was. And he called me, and I said, how'd you get my phone number? I didn't leave that. And he said, well, I have your social security number.
Oh,
So he said, do you want to come back to work? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, they still won't let me do anything but pillows in the upholstery shop, and I don't want to do pillows, so I went back to work for him. And then I decided I really should know how a balloon works. So he allowed me to make my own balloon, took it out, inflated it, worked. It was beautiful. It was Cloud 9, AX4, and loved it. But the FAA wouldn't give me the rest of my license because I'd had open heart surgery, and they didn't know where to place me.
oh.
So my ex-husband blew the balloon, his daughter flew the balloon, Bob Rex flew the balloon, and finally I got to fly the balloon.
It was all worn out.
And on the first,
She still has it.
Oh, she did.
the first lesson I had, they put me in with a student pilot who just had gotten his license. 8 hours, that's all you needed. We inflated the balloon about 8 o'clock in the desert, which was absolute ridiculous because we got caught in a thermal. We were going round and round and round on the ground, and the student pilot says, "What's going on?" And I said, "You're the pilot, tell me." He says, "I'm getting out." And he did. I grabbed for him and missed him, and off I took.
Oh, and you got to fly no matter what, huh?
I thought, well, I better learn how to fly this sucker real fast. So up over the foothills I went, and all 3 of my landings were really great. That's how I got into ballooning.
Well, that's, I thought the other part was good. This is even better, yeah. So, and so I want to know, you had 3 sewing machines. Then you were the only sewer? Or did he finally get someone else to sew?
It depended on the workload that we had.
Mm.
If he had more than 1 or 2 balloons going, then he'd hire somebody else. But
I have to ask, did you sew, Don?
Pardon me?
Did you sew?
Yeah, I taught her.
Okay, but
The heavy
but
machine.
you were doing the sewing before she showed
Yeah,
up.
I had a chief petty officer parachute rigger in New Jersey at Lakehurst that could make a sewing machine dance. And he gave me a lot of time on the sewing machines because his parachute loft was right next to my balloon loft. And while we didn't do much sewing on the balloons, they're gas balloons, they're rubberized cotton, and they glue them. But we do bigger balloons and airships, they'd sew the seam in addition.
Oh, so you were building gas balloons?
Yeah, working, repairing, maintaining gas balloons at Lakers during World War II, and then came back again in the reserve in the Korean crisis. Actually, the only person I ever heard of who had the exact same job when they recalled into active duty for Korea, I had the exact same job. Usually they send you off to something else, so, destroy the reserve. But where I'd muster on the hangar deck during World War II was just to the right of one of these iron pad eyes, a little ring that they tie the blimps down to.
Yeah.
And came back to Korea, and I had to stand on the other side of that pad eye in the morning. Somebody else had come in that was taller than I was, or younger, or something like that. But I had there were log books of different equipment, valves, and so on. Kept separate log books that had not been touched since I had put them on the shelf when I left after World War II.
Good
So it
night.
was a perfect example of efficiency in the U.S. federal government.
Yeah, we see that a lot. So, that's good. So how did you get into ballooning?
Me?
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of a dragged out story. My earliest memory was in the mid-40s. I had to be 5, 6, 7 years old, and I saw a blimp go overhead. I was living in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. And it was flying kind of low, and it was so huge, and it scared me. I hid. So I also had this memory of this blimp. And I thought, I want to be up in that blimp. So when I got out of high school, I joined the Navy. I wanted to go in a blimp squadron. I wanted to fly on a blimp. So I joined the Navy in 1969, I think it was, 68. And the Navy had blimps until 1972.
I wondered. Okay.
And I had seen blimps, but I never got on a blimp squadron. I got into patrol airplanes I was a mechanic on. And then I always wanted to fly in a blimp. So I took up skydiving. I took up sport parachuting after I got out of the Navy. And I only made 13 jumps. I didn't jump that much. And I thought parachuting was kind of boring because you'd go up in the airplane, you'd come down in 3 minutes, you'd be on the ground, and it's all over. But it was kind of fun. I didn't pursue it too much. A couple years later, I think it was the early 70s, I read an article, I think it was in Sports Illustrated, about a balloon event out in California, where this lady tore her balloon up in the tree and had to send it to Raven Industries to get repaired. So I wrote to Raven Industries and said, do you know anything about balloons? And they sent me this fancy brochure. This is like 1973. And I thought, there's no way I could ever afford one of these, but they're pretty. And then I got a letter from them a little while later that a local balloonist, a local person had gotten a balloon about 5 miles from where I lived. Dick and Nat, his name is. So I looked Dick up. I gave him $1,000 to teach me how to fly. This was like January of 1974.
Where was I? $1,000.
That was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
Is that Doug Gannett? Is that? are
Dick
they- is that the-
Gannett.
But on the
Richard.
internet, they have a Doug Gannett. Is that?
I don't think he's active anymore, Richard.
Oh, okay.
And anyhow, I learned how to fly a balloon. Back then you needed 8 hours. I only landed twice. One was on my solo flight, was my first landing, because when Dick was teaching me, Dick had less than 20 hours when he taught me. He learned from a pilot who had less than 20 hours.
Harold.
But back in 1974, if you had 100 hours, you were a very experienced pilot. You know, we didn't have a whole lot of guys like Don here who had a lot of experience behind them. Everybody was new. And I got my ticket in July of 1974, or June of 74,
Who get this? Did this guy?
through Dick Gannett. I had
He's
12
the
hours
only,
in.
Is he's the only one that instructed you?
Yes. Actually, that was the only balloon I'd ever seen before I came to the Nationals in 1974.
What kind was it?
It was a Raven. It had an aluminum basket with a 4-burner can on it.
So, how's it going?
You did turn on.
Why did?
I kept wondering about that.
I'm sorry. I pushed the. Now is it on?
Now it's on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got
So-
a new coffee pot.
That's the
too.
difference between an industrial coffee maker.
Yeah, I
and a
know.
home.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It should have been one.
If you can run one, you can run the other, but some people don't think so.
So yeah.
So I bought my first balloon. Balloon Works was just getting their balloons certified, like in February of '74. And if you put down $500, you held a price of $6,500 or something. So I did that, and I had never even seen a Balloon Works. I just seen pictures of it. And I loved the picture of the triangle basket. You know, I thought it was so unique. So I had to borrow some money, and I ended up borrowing some money from my girlfriend's parents to buy this balloon.
Was that you?
Uh-huh.
No. Oh yeah, they met later. Okay. Okay.
And anyhow, the funny thing is, about a month after I paid off the balloon, my girlfriend left me. So I had the balloon though, so I was happy.
That was good.
And the rest is history. I've been flying balloons ever since.
Wow. So how did you get into ballooning?
I moved to Indianola in '68, and in early '70s the balloons came to Indianola, and I was just fascinated by them, and had to be there.
How old were you back then?
Just out of high school, graduated high school in '73. '74 we were married, and '75 we were on chase crew, and have been ever since.
Chasing
Chasing.
something.
Well, we started out with Paul Wosner and Sid Cutter and the World Balloon crowd. Worked through a lot of their different pilots that they bring up. Met everybody. I mean, just all those people. You know,
Oh, that's a lot of ballooning history that you
it
crewed
was
for.
it was interesting. We've been kind of watching from the back rows, but in '88 got my pilot's license and bought our first balloon for our family, and then we've had 3 now since.
What was your first one?
Whispering Blue, old Raven with the countered fabric and a double square shooter burner, aluminum basket. Dick Brown was the original owner.
No. Okay. And would you introduce yourself now, please?
I'm Rita.
Go, turn over there.
Hi, I'm Rita. And I'm Jim's wife. I chase him all over the place.
So, what would you think? You know, when you now, I'm aiming for these ladies over here, because the guys. I mean, you've traveled all over the world, and flown most all over the world. What would you, when you think of a flight or a place that they flew or you went, what pops up in your mind?
Well, I can think of in Japan, the flight where they took off, it was evening flight, and we went racing for the target to get there so we could help them out. And all of a sudden, I get a call and it says, we're at such and such, you know, the coordinates. And of course, I've take my time, you know, in the door, coming up the steps, you know. The observer goes, they're here, and it's in the bay. They had gone off
Oh,
into the water. And we were getting reports, okay, we're over the pier now, because they got as close as they could to the water to get back on shore, because they could see the smoke from the rice fields, because they would burn them coming inland. And up above it was going out like crazy. They just made it over the wall, the seawall, when the weather changed. But that, I think, was probably the most interesting. I love Japan anyway. And so that would be the flight I would remember.
yeah, and then, you know, it's unique that they, you know, you watch everything, you know, and it's just not the wind or your machines. I mean, like the smoke from the rice, that's old school. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of these young ones, they never get their faces out of the computer, out of everything. They don't even see what they're flying over or who they're flying next to.
If I
Go
can
ahead.
speak a little bit about that flight.
That's fine.
That was a very interesting flight because we were flying in the World Championships in Saga. I had Al Blount with me in the basket with me, and we thought, well, if we go up to 3,000 feet, we're going to catch some left, which was what we needed. Well, we went too much right, and we were going over the water, and I could see the smokes coming the wrong way. So we terminaled down the water, and I said, Al, blow some shaving cream over and see what we're doing. What's down below there? He says, the shaving cream's going up. I said, well, throw the can over. And we came down just to the top of the water. We just creep inland, and I started breathing again, because if you went out over the water, I don't know what you do. I think you're fish food. Because it's,
So tell me about this shaving cream.
well, we blow shaving cream over the side just to see what the winds below are doing.
And so the little, and if it goes this way, and who came up with that idea? Or is that?
It wasn't me. It's something that
It's been
most
around?
balloonists do.
Well,
Don, did you ever do that?
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
In the Navy, we use toilet paper, and I always use toilet paper. As a result of that, I think the first place I heard of people using shaving cream, because nobody's going to claim you're littering.
Right.
I think was in Albuquerque. I think Paul Woosner, but I may be entirely wrong on that. That's just having researched. It's just my thought.
I'm thinking we get all these remarks about shaving cream in the basket, but seeing a roll of toilet paper in the basket would be.
Well, it actually wasn't toilet paper. It was
Little tissue.
GI sounding tissue.
Well, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Do you use shaving cream? No. I just wondered. I don't think that's an Iowa trait
Do you
that I've
have a
heard.
piece of office, a regular sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper? And I have that. You know, in the Navy, we used the toilet paper. Ralph Upson and Van Orman, the great gas balloonists, used ordinary sheet of paper like this and folded it. Now, you know, you're going on a flight for 2 or 3 days, and so you're going to have to drop thousands of sounding tissues. But toilet paper fluffs around like that, and it goes slowly. It's inconsistent in its speed. But they would take the paper and fold it like this so that it has a dihedral.
Okay.
And when you drop a piece of paper like that, it goes down very squarely.
Oh.
That one went at an angle.
Haven't done it for a while.
Well,
Well, I learn more all the time on these interviews.
I'm learning myself.
Well, good.
you have these stacked up, and when you want to drop one,
Yes.
you drop it,
Yeah.
and it goes down
okay.
very squarely and very consistent speed. You'll get to learn it, and from that, as you see which way it goes,
I'm gonna try this.
instead of going straight down,
Yeah.
you watch and you'll see it go over this way. Oh, I wanted to go that way. So then you go up and you go over that way, and then you come down and you go over this way and hit your target.
Really? Well, now we both learned something.
I definitely did.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm not sure, you probably would know, this, I think, would be illegal to do if you're coming approaching a target
they say
anymore.
things, lightweight things, and small scraps of paper, you could
Okay.
argue your case that that's a small scrap of paper, maybe.
Probably, you're really good.
Oh, they're really tiny. Are those the little
Jim, you
things?
bring up a real good point. You got a bunch of yin-yang nitpicking bums that are making it confusing, making it more like yacht racing to see who's the better balloonist.
Well,
And it isn't a question of who's, so often it isn't a question of balloonists, it's a question of who can handle all the electronics to go through the pie-shaped, three-dimensional things, and do things that are not actual balloonists. I got in the balloon yesterday and I said, may I see the operating limitations before we, I wanted to look at the balloon. 7 miles an hour.
really?
That's the maximum that balloon's allowed to fly in. And, I think balloon races should fly in real weather.
Like this
Fly
morning.
under the FAR, not under some fancy nitpicking little rule. We wanted to do a balloon race and we never got the sponsorship. We almost had a radio station, a top 40 radio station in Kansas, sponsor a balloon race that was to go over a week. And you could go to the board and pick any time, launch time you wanted. And there was a circle with a cubic yard of concrete buried with an iron ring. And you could go into that circle at the start of your time. And then you inflate your balloon and you land within 1 hour from the start of your time. So that the net result was you were in real life condition working with the weather at that time. And you had to inflate the balloon and you had to fly it and land.
No, I don't want to.
You could pick your own time on the chart, and you'd find that the heroes would be taking 2 o'clock in the afternoon when there was going to be plenty of wind,
Yeah.
and the more gentle people would be taking 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever. The local radio station would be saying, "Oh, Don Piccard's flying at 2 this afternoon. Come to see him kill himself." And then they'd have, "Well, Willie Piccard's flying at 9 in the morning." Well, I get out at 2 in the afternoon and it's 30-mile-an-hour wind and I turn my balloon up and I don't get any score, but I'm real life. That was one event that I would like to see. The business of spot landing, we were fine the first couple of years in Indianola. And then you'd land, but then they had too many balloons come in and they said that's too heavy a load. So then let's not land, let's leave a marker and go on and find a remote landing place so that the target area is clear. Well, then they began dropping a baggie to show the marker. And then they began dropping the baggie from 1,000 feet. Well, that's not a spot landing if you're 1,000 feet in the air, and all the way between 1,000 feet where you're dropping the baggie from, or even 50 feet where you're dropping the baggie from, to the ground, you've got all different directions of winds and conditions. So that flying over 50 feet is not the same thing as coming in and landing. And that's what the competition was, to land where you wanted to. When I was, as a kid, I was told about balloon races in Switzerland with gas balloons where they'd put out bed sheets around the launch site, 10 miles out. And you'd determine, you'd say which bed sheet you were taking as a target. And sometimes they have to bring in 2 separate sheets in to see which one had the bigger, weaker impact on them. That was what the really thing was. You were actually making a landing. Not flying over at 10 feet or 50 feet or 100 feet, or I've seen them drop from 1,000 feet.
And then he runs a race in Orange, California, where he decides to put me in his hair with a man from Belgium who didn't speak English and I didn't speak French. With 9 or 10 other balloons.
I think we had about 10 balloons.
And Orange is the industrial area.
A
So
lot of
he
parking
figured, well, you
lots.
can find a parking lot big enough. Okay, so I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked. And I finally decided, well, if I don't get down here pretty soon, this guy's going to end up crashing with me. So I landed And the object was the first person to land close to me who got run over and could give me a kiss won the race.
Oh.
So the
Wow.
guy from Belgium had his hand caught in the chain. And once I got his hand up from there, I kept saying, kiss me,
Well, that
because
was-
he won the race.
It was sort of fixed. We had a nice sponsor, and he went out and got 10. There were 10 people. He got 10 antique silver items from the antique stores, and they were varying in size and price. So he said the first person gets first choice, second person gets third choice, and they'd been so nice to me in St. Nicholas, Belgium, that I wanted to return the favor. So I invited the senior balloonist from Belgium to come and fly in the race, and I said we'd provide a balloon. Well, Albert van der Straten arrived, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I've never flown a hot air balloon before. Do you
So
have
he
a-"
turns around and says, take him up. I don't
So I said,
like
"Well, all
flying
right.
in the city.
We'll put you in with my wife, and you can be the pilot and fly the balloon." And but she's the target. So after you land, you have to give her a kiss before anybody else. And one of the guys landed so close, he saw her coming in to land. He crashed his balloon and jumped and he ran, and he almost won.
Oh.
Albert was elderly gentleman,
Yeah.
probably not as old as I am now, but at that time he was an elderly gentleman, and so finally she got her, and he did give her the kiss, and he came first place, and somebody else came second. The Irish fellow was a great collector of antique silver. He was known for his collection of Georgian silver, and we had all these antique silver pieces, and he came, and they were on display, and he came by at the dinner ahead of time, and his eyes lit up at one of them. I said, "Which one? What do you, oh no, I'm not gonna tell him." He didn't want to tips anybody off about what, well, the van der Straten got a barrel of wine, silver with cups and everything else. It was a magnificent thing. And the thing that Willie looked at was a little antique Georgian spoon warmer. He didn't have a spoon warmer.
Oh.
And that would, to him, was worth the trip to America, was to get a genuine Georgian English silver spoon warmer. He came in last.
Oh, no.
Can I tell you the story about Chase and Dawn?
Yeah,
Are we still on that?
sure, we
Well,
can
when
do
he came in
anything.
last, I did want to say that the
Yeah.
spoon warmer was still there.
Oh, it was. So he got it?
So he
You're
got
gonna
the
have
Oh.
to explain what a spoon warmer
I
is.
don't know what a spoon warmer is
Well, it's a
either.
little silver thing. It was sort of like a seashell, and they put hot water in it.
Oh.
And then before you serve something, you dip the spoon in the hot water,
Oh.
so it doesn't
Does it
chill
Oh.
and destroy the. Sometimes if you take a cold utensil, it would make something go
okay.
flat or something. I don't know. I'm not a cook.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you use a hot spoon for?
I don't know, I've seen
Chocolate
cold
syrup,
forks,
I
but
don't
not,
know.
unless you'd use a soup or,
Yeah.
cool, warm up the soup. Okay, let's hear.
The only time I ever lost Dawn was in New Zealand.
Chasing.
And I didn't want to pull this big trailer, so one of the locals said, okay, I'll drive for you. We started out and I kept saying, you need to go here, you need to go here. Then we saw him land someplace up on the hill, and he said, well, he'll have to be helicoptered out. No, I know Don, he's going to go by a road. Just go over there. He refused, he absolutely wouldn't. And why I didn't grab the keys and take them away from him, I don't know, but we missed him and Don had to be helicoptered out. I have chased him.
This guy wrote a book called Four Wheeling in New Zealand.
And he was
and
afraid to
telling
go
all
up
about
there.
the different back mountain roads that he could go with his
And he
four-wheel
wouldn't- He
drive.
wouldn't go up there.
He just wanted a helicopter ride. I
And
walked it.
were you by the road?
Yeah, you could come up
He
with
always
Right,
landed
yeah.
by a road. In Ireland, It was so foggy, you could not tell where the balloon was at all. Do you know how I found him? I watched the cows. The cows lined up along the fence, and they were looking
They were
up.
watching.
I thought, okay, he's over there in that field.
Yeah.
The cows could hear and cycle, you couldn't see, but all the time we lived in Ireland, one time we saw the Irish Army helicopter fly by. But other than that, we never saw any air traffic.
Yeah, there was no.
Just one time. When we looked at the map in Ireland, we saw air traffic routes to North America and air traffic routes to South America and so on, so that there was a triangle of area where there wasn't any air traffic, and that's where we looked to find a farm to buy.
The only time when he was chasing me that I got a little upset was he had my station wagon and he straddled it over.
This is in California.
This is the creek is going this way, and he straddled it like this, and he's got it caught in the middle. And I thought, oh
And
great,
she's up
there
above
goes my
looking down.
car.
It was a channel too deep to go across at right angles, and you'd go at a parallel angle, but I got just at the right correct angle so that the left front wheel was in the air on the ground, and the right rear wheel was on the ground, but the other two were midair, and it wasn't four-wheel drive. we got it out eventually, but from the air she
Kind of
wouldn't
heard
go well.
about that.
Now, Rita, she gets to do all that chasing too. What do you have an eventful chase that you can remember?
Talking about Paul Wozner.
Well, when we were crewing for Paul Wozner back at when the Nationals were here, he landed, and we came to the field. He's standing there. He's, come on, come on, come on. And we're coming along.
Grass was this tall.
And the grass was up to the door, at the window of the door. And he's standing there, and you can see the basket here. And come on, come on, come on. And the front of the truck fell off the earth.
Oh,
And he says, damn, I forgot about that hole.
The basket was actually caught in that hole.
That's what stopped him, because he was going along in the
It was just a little ditch right there.
Yeah. We actually had to have a tractor come pull us out. But I think that's the only time we've ever had to be pulled out of anything.
We had one other time, it was a little slick, but not a big deal. But yeah, that was
Exciting.
that was funny. He's like, oh God.
Yeah, and that's what stopped him, and he didn't remember it for
It was right there.
Right there.
Right there.
one
where
of
he
the
was
races here, I landed in a thistle field because I didn't want to get any further. I'd been too far away from the target. And they had to get a manure spreader to come in and get me out.
So, Mary, do you fly?
No.
No.
Well, I've flown with him, and when he would go to throw the baggie in a terminal descent, he said, "You fly."
Oh yeah, right.
And I just sit there, burn. When is it gonna come?
You throw the baggie and the baggie goes up.
Well, I didn't even look. He just said, "You're flying," and we're
How many hours do you have as a
Me?
pilot? Yeah,
I have
PIC.
no idea.
Don, how about you?
I lost my logbook several years ago, and I think I had a little over 1,000 hours at the time, but that was when you didn't fly every day.
Yeah.
And you've got kids now that are flying these 20-passenger baskets or 30-passenger baskets, and they're flying 2 or 3 times a day. You've got people in Cappadocia that have never seen a moving automobile hardly, and but they're flying all the time. So that I'm sure there are people that have 50,000 hours in
Yeah.
now.
How many do you have?
I've got over 2,000 hours, maybe 2,100 and something. Not much over 2,000. There are pilots out there. I think the highest number pilot I've heard is 6,500.
I went, I'm gonna say Chuck Eiler. Yeah, Chuck Eiler, and he's like 94 and still flying.
Mhm.
I wonder how many he's got. I mean,
I don't know.
he keeps going. How many hours do you have?
Just over 1,000, about 1,100.
Not bad for no longer than you've been flying. So,
It isn't so much how many hours. It's maybe how many flights, but how many different hours, how many different conditions.
yeah.
And if you're talking about ballooning, this is what I believe is the mantra, is that every flight is different. You never have the same flight again. Now, in California and the desert on the dry lakes, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between one flight and another. But basically, this is one of the great attractions to me for the sport of ballooning, is that it's always a new challenge. It's always a new circumstance. You're looking at the weather, you're looking at the terrain, you're looking at your passengers, what your conditions are, what you want to show them. I went to England, and Jerry Turnbull set me up for a balloon ride, to take a man for a ride, because he wanted to fly. But Jerry didn't want to fly him because the man was totally blind.
No.
In World War II, he had been working on a landmine, and it blew up in his face. So he had very little recognizable face and absolutely no eyes. He was a national treasure, Ken Revis. And he was known for driving a taxi cab in London traffic.
With no eyes?
With
no
his wife,
eyes?
is his wife in the seat behind him with her hands, like a tank operator does with their feet. So his
Yeah.
wife is conning him, but he's doing all the steering wheel and all the gear shifting of London taxi in
dear.
traffic. This guy is a World War II hero and a veteran and a disabled, and he wants to take a law course, so he takes a law course, and the only other adult in the law course was Jerry Turnbull, who's retiring from the Air Force. So the two of them get together, and this blind man is getting his law degree at the age of 50 or something. And Turnbull tells him about this new sport of ballooning. He says, "Oh, I want to do that." And he says, "Well, I've got a friend coming over from America who will give you a balloon ride." I'm delivering a balloon
Yeah.
to Goldsmith, and so I didn't know anything about that. I got off the boat, and one reason I took the job to go to England was I wanted to be able to buy a new Morris Minor, and they weren't selling them in America anymore. So I got off the boat and I called British Motors Corporation in Oxford, asked to speak to the chairman or the director of public relations. The guy came on the phone, it was Ken Revis, director of public relations. And I said, "Well, I'm Don Piccard. I'm a rather keen Morris Minor owner from America. My Morris is getting old. I'd like to buy a new one before I leave, and I understand you're not selling them into the States anymore, but I thought because of my connections with ballooning and public relations that it might be a good thing for you to make an exception to sell me one." Revis says, "Oh, I know this is a complete put-up." I didn't know anything about Turnbull offering Revis a balloon ride.
Oh.
And Turnbull didn't tell Revis about Piccard being a Morris Minor owner. So he thought the whole thing was...
Oh, I see.
Well, it turned out that it wasn't, and I took him for the balloon ride, and we came down into a little valley, a little low, and I said, "We're going to feel the balloon is going to carry into the zero wind in this valley, and you'll feel wind in your face, and it'll be cooler and damp. All right, now we're coming up to some willow trees," and he just stood in front of the basket and the willow fronds on his face, and came over some cattle, and I made an exception, and so came over the cattle. Now, when you hear cattle stampede from here, it's a roar. You're getting all of the hoof beats are coming through everything else, but when you're directly above, and I heard it go, it's staccato. It's each individual hoof beat's coming up. So as he came over the cattle, I go, "Yeah!" And the cattle just ran away from the balloon. Farmer wasn't anywhere nearby. Not the thing you should normally do. But I wanted to give Ken what it was, so he could hear and get the whole sense of all it. And we're flying along, there's a road coming. I wonder where we are. And he says, "What's on the road?" And I says, "Well, going to the right is a lorry with a whole bunch of chassis. And going to the left is a lorry that has piles of, look like fuel tanks." And I described a couple of trucks and what they're carrying. He said, "Oh, that truck is going from this fact plant to that plant, that truck's, so we must be on the A-15.
Oh,
He blind, but he knew where the different factories
things
were.
were. Huh.
And there, you see, is a different balloon flight. To me, that was one of the greatest balloon flights I've ever had.
Experience all the way around.
I couldn't take any chances, I couldn't hurt, but I had to give him the feeling and the experience of it. And it was, to me, absolutely
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's cool. And I think that's why a lot of people like to come here, because it's not like you can only fly in the morning, you know, and you can fly morning and evening, and it's a different flight. Like last night was too windy, but this morning it started off beautiful, and then you never know what's going to happen. And so, what would be when you think of flying? What's the sensation?
Mostly it's just the feeling of being open, unencumbered. It's just, I'm a little claustrophobic. You know, if I have too many people in this room, I'll leave. But up in the balloon basket, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And it's just a very free feeling and open and airy, and it's usually nice weather. And it's just something I really like.
I know a lot of people, a lot of the pilots are afraid of heights, and it's a, you know, and they say, yeah,
So
are you?
Sarah-
I am.
And you know, it's a whole different look. I mean, if you don't look down, I mean, you really don't feel like you're up there with you. And when you're just going with the wind, and people, and it's for a first rider, they're going, you know, I don't feel like I'm moving, you know, because they are, but they aren't. And so and then when you go to the East Coast, then they can only fly, a lot of them only fly in the morning, and in Albuquerque and stuff. So I think this is like in the Midwest, we have a real special place, because we can fly, and we fly over grass and asphalt and water and everything else where, yeah, cornfields.
But it's so
and stuff.
pretty when you get that quilted look when
Yeah.
the tassels are out.
If you can afford it, the corn is sturdy, deep enough, solid enough, that it makes a very good resting gear. But yet it isn't like a tree, like Snoopy would say, a balloon-eating tree.
Yeah.
So if you can afford it, corn in season is my mother recommended it as a landing place.
I flew with David Rapp a couple years ago, and we were just kind of floating over the cornfield, and you could not see the deer, but you could hear them, and they were running up and down the road, and then the corn was just going whoo, you know, and then we get to that, and whoo, you know, and it was really cool, and I'm sure it scared them to death, but we were enjoying that.
In the Navy, flying in New Jersey, gas balloon with a drag rope. You'd come down, and the drag rope would be behind you, and the deer would all run out in front, because when they'd get off to the side, they'd hear that whole drag rope. But when they were directly in front of you, they'd only just get the sound of just the one.
Ah.
So you'd follow them, and the deer would just be going along like a whole herd of deer would be running like just a snake, keeping in front of you, throwing apples at them and so on. Ballooning in the Navy was a lot of fun. And I think when we talk about Raven days, when we're starting this thing, it was a sport balloon. There is no market for sport balloons. And a hot air balloon is something that people say, hot air balloon, you know, hot air. They think of Eddie Allen and Wally Scholl and Skinny Hall and soot, skin that's ingrained with the soot. When they cough, it comes up black. They check into the hotel, the bellboy goes up, takes the sheets off the bed, because they're going to ruin them on a hot summer night in Nebraska with no air conditioning back in 1900. You know, this was a terrible life, but we wanted to sell hot air balloons, so we called them thermal balloons, because the word hot air was a bad thing, so we called them thermal balloons, and we wanted to get people to enjoy it. And what do you do with it? Raven is accustomed to flying military balloons where you take off and you fly and you come in and you jump out and let the balloon go because you don't want evidence of your balloon. Before I got to Raven, they'd never made a controlled landing. My first flight in any hot air balloon was with the 38-foot diameter balloon. Came in and landed. You know, you're landing on your feet, stabilized, and sat there. And goes over the side of the field. My God, we've got another failure because they've been having trouble with the blasting cap opening at the top. And you know, he got very disturbed. And they came running across, and there I was, and says, "Well, let's walk it over to the side of the field." I mean, there's nothing wrong. He damn near fired me on the spot. Because I hadn't done what you're meant to do. You're meant to come in, and you see the movie.
Yeah.
You're meant to come in about 5 feet, you hit the squib, the blasting cap, you jump out, run away, it goes up and it comes back down, and you get a hold of it, stop it. And that's the routine. But in the Navy, the balloons were for the purpose of training airship pilots. If an airship blimp loses a motor, loses a control cable, loses pressure, runs low on fuel, it becomes a free balloon. So an airship pilot should be a free balloon pilot. An airplane pilot can't be a free airplane pilot because there is no such thing. They crash, parachute out. But a blimp, they can then fly it like a balloon, like Admiral Rosendahl did with the front half of the Shenandoah when it broke in two. You fly it like a balloon and make it land. So the training at Lakehurst was to land. We had to come, the more landings you logged in a day, the better success the flight was. So we're flying in New Jersey, in the pine forests, pine barrens, wide open territory. Government's paying for any power lines we tear down. Government's paying for any livestock we damage. Unless it's the commanding general of Fort Dix and his prize state fair winning pig. That was a real problem. But regardless, normally you're just having a great time at government expense flying a gas balloon. That's what I wanted to do with hot air balloons. The Europeans say, "Oh no, a balloon flight is you take off, you fly, you have the view, you come in and make an appearance, make a landing." And that's ballooning, this business of flying low and crashing. No. So the different opinions. But this is what I thought would make a sport. Give the people the opportunity to get down and maneuver the balloon and get the last few feet of altitude is where the major changes and headings are, a little left, a little right. So that was my purpose. And when I flew that first time I flew, I came in and landed in the middle of the field, came in and sat down. It was a whole new thing. Then marrying the lore of my parents and my father talked about the Swiss Balloon Club and the races that they had, rallies they had between the balloons and the automobile clubs to have the automobiles chasing the balloons. Some people think that's a better sport to chase a balloon than to fly a balloon. But I haven't gotten any tickets chasing a balloon. although about 2 weeks after I was put off active duty at Lakehurst, Captain Watson issued a station order that Bosun mate third class Piccard, is not to drive any chase vehicles. He may have a Navy driver's license, but he will not chase balloons. And the lieutenant said, but sir, he was discharged last week. He says, I don't care if he's discharged, I want the order. Piccard is not to chase. To me, that was a great sport. Driving a steak body.
So, like the three main, when they started modern hot air balloons with the burner, it was you and Semco and Raven, and you all started with the cables, because that's the only thing you'd ever seen with the gas balloons and everything.
Cables?
Well, I'd call them cables that hook the basket to the envelope.
Okay, yeah.
Is there a better word for cable?
No,
I
no.
call them cables.
No.
Anyway, and
Suspension cables.
okay, and then some of you had the open baskets. Some of you had like the different cans. Some of you had. I mean, they were all just like a car dealership. Everybody had a little different.
We
And-
go out here on the floor here at the museum.
Right, and when Tracy Barnes decided that he didn't like to wear a helmet, and I heard you yesterday saying that the burner doesn't come